Excitement for a third X-Men movie burned brighter than an optic blast from Cyclops' visor. 2003's X2 set a new standard for superhero films, and 2004's Spider-Man 2 had taken that baton and swung with it. And things weren't just looking up for iconic Marvel characters. In 2005, Christopher Nolan reset the Batman franchise with Batman Begins, a mature, realistic reimagining of the classic character. And X-Men auteur Bryan Singer was about to reboot Superman. Sure, there were misfires like Fantastic Four and the Daredevil films, but for those of us who grew up on comic book heroes, it was the beginning of a truly golden era. Besides, X-Men The Last Stand would be adapting perhaps the most iconic storyline in the franchise's storied history, the Dark Phoenix saga, and the full cast was returning. Despite replacing Singer with Rush Hour director Brett Ratner, the general sentiment among fans was, "It's X3. How could this possibly go wrong?" Welcome to Superhero Cinema Club, an in-depth exploration of the history of superhero films. I'm Mark Schiff, and joining me as always, it's the Phoenix to my Jean Grey. It's Mike Carnes.
Oh, wow. I'm the evil version of you, I take it, in this metaphor.
I think so, Mike. Not that we're all the heroes of our own story, but I do kind of feel like you bring the Phoenix energy a little bit, and I bring the steady Jean Grey energy.
Oh, wow.
Or something
Yeah,
like that.
sure. Something like that.
I'm throwing you under the bus. That sounds bad. Don't look too deep into it. It's not that deep. Speaking of, today we are going to be discussing the third and final film in the original X-Men trilogy, 2006's X-Men: The Last Stand. If you have not seen this film or you'd like to revisit it before you get into our discussion, you can stream all of the X-Men films with a subscription to Disney+, so we highly recommend you do that before you dive in, unless you're one of the X-Men The Last Stand heads that's seen this movie enough times that you don't even need to go back and refresh your memory. Mike, I'm not sure how many X-Men: The Last Stand heads are really even out there, but you know, maybe there's some, no disrespect to those who are huge fans.
Yeah, if this is your bag, then this episode's for you.
There we go. So to kick it off, I was thinking about this, Mike. X2 has somewhat of a confusing title. Sometimes it's subtitled X2 X-Men United. Sometimes you'll see it as just X2. That is not the case with X-Men: The Last Stand, which is only called that name and was very much billed as the final film in a trilogy. Spoiler alert, we still have 5 more X-Men films to discuss this season, plus in a separate season, 3 Wolverine movies and 3 Deadpool movies. Nevertheless, it did kind of get me thinking, Mike. There's a lot of superhero sequels, and we've reached this point where there's even a lot of part 3 of superhero movies. So what do you think is the best part 3 of a superhero franchise?
So I have a clarifying question around this. If we're talking superhero franchise, for the MCU movies, do I have to start with like Iron Man being installation number 1, Hulk being number 2, and is it Thor's number 3, or is it Iron Man 2 is number 3?
Yeah, no. It's more per franchise, and also to further delineate that, right? Spider-Man 3, I mean, Amazing Spider-Man never got a third one, right? Technically, right, Spider-Man Homecoming is like Spider-Man 7 or something. Like, no, that's Spider-Man 1 for the MCU, so the third installment, No Way Home, would be the third. So, yeah, what do you think?
I think if we're allowing that to happen, then my personal pick would be Thor Ragnarok as the best third installation of a superhero movie. I was leaning towards Dark Knight Rises for a bit there, and then I remembered Thor Ragnarok existed, and I was like, oh yeah, it's got to be that. That movie's great all the way through. It's hilarious. It completely reinvents the character and brings a fresh perspective to a character that needed it sorely.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this, any of the films that we've discussed thus far on our podcast are going to make the belt. So Superman 3, definitely not. The third Batman Forever, definitely not that one. And then I started kind of extrapolating, right? Even Spider-Man 3, not beloved. However, once you start getting into the MCU, you've got Captain America Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, that's my favorite of the franchise. You could also say Avengers 3, Avengers Infinity War. Banger. of a movie.
Yeah, great movie.
Nevertheless, when I started thinking hard about this, I had to come down to Ant-Man and the Wasp. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, it's Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is the correct answer to this question. You just said everything. It completely reinvents the character, the way that we think of him now. He's funny. It's a really funny movie. Taika Waititi just did an absolute knockout job with that film. I think it's really in the pantheon of all-time great superhero films. It's funny, the action's great. It's got a lot of heart too. Sets up a lot of stuff in the MCU moving forward. So, yeah, I think Thor Ragnarok is the belt holder for the best third installment in the superhero film. That is not to disparage X-Men: The Last Stand, because that's what we'll be discussing today. And let's kick it off with our tale of the Cape. Mike, this movie was released on May 26, 2006. Fun fact about this movie, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. Not exactly what you think of as a Cannes film, but it was released out of competition, of where obviously it would have won the Gold Lion for Best Film, but they said, this is such a surefire winner of the Golden Lion that we're going to take it out of competition so these other art films have a chance to win. That was 2 days before its American release, which, as I mentioned, May 26, 2006. Fun fact about this movie, Mike, the budget on this one, each installment in the X-Men franchises, slowly increased. This one came in at $210 million in 2006 money. That made it the most expensive movie ever made at the time of its release. It was very quickly surpassed by Pirates of the Caribbean, which cost $225 million and went on to become the number one movie of 2006. However, 210 million bucks, that's not a small chunk of change. However, the film was rewarded, quote unquote, with $460.4 million worldwide, making it the seventh highest grossing film of 2006. They bet big on this one. It paid off. However, I think there's an argument to be made, and we'll get into it further as this podcast progresses, that overall this film was viewed as somewhat of a disappointment relative to the first two. A big part of that had to do with the departure of director Bryan Singer. Say what you will about the man's personal life. We've discussed it in previous episodes, including Superman Returns, where we got into all this, but Bryan Singer bailed in 2004, the year after X2 was released, to take the reins on a new Superman film. The thing that's interesting about this is that apparently 20th Century Fox, who was the studio behind X-Men, was really kind of wavering on giving him a big pay increase. And so that's why he ended up leaving the production, because Warner Brothers was like, we'll give you a crap load of money to come do Superman. So that kind of left the production in a lurch to try to find a new director. A number of directors were approached, Mike, and one of them, your boy Darren Aronofsky. He had just worked with Hugh Jackman on The Fountain. See our previous episode for recommendations.
That's right.
On that particular film. But apparently Hugh Jackman had a lot of sway in deciding who was going to be the director for this film. I would not be against seeing an Aronofsky version of the X-Men. What are your thoughts?
Could only be better. I had heard that Hugh Jackman was heavily trying to promote bringing him on when Bryan Singer stepped away. He really enjoyed his time collaborating with him on The Fountain and thought that he was a true professional to come in and take the reins. But apparently they didn't listen to him and made a terrible decision.
Was not to be. Given the source material that they were using for this film, they also approached Joss Whedon to be a potential director for this film. However, Joss Whedon was busy working on a Wonder Woman movie. Ironically, that would never come to fruition, but I can see how he wouldn't really want to get his wires crossed, and he passed on it as well. They also approached Zack Snyder, Peter Berg, and Guillermo del Toro to direct the movie. None of those guys said yes. Everyone's turning down the X-Men, which is kind of astonishing when you think about it. Finally, 20th Century Fox settles and makes a deal with Layer Cake director and Guy Ritchie collaborator Matthew Vaughn to come in and make this film. Matthew Vaughn's name may sound familiar to X-Men fans because he goes on to direct X-Men First Class. However, the tight deadlines around the film's release in 2006 This is all happening in 2005. So he's like, you guys are trying to get this out in a year. I don't know if I can do it. At the time, he had put it on family problems and things like that. But I think in the end, it ultimately was he just knew the production was going to end up being quite rushed. One man who was not so concerned with tight deadlines was Brett Ratner. He signed on to direct this film in June of 2005, less than a year before it was scheduled for release. Now, Brett Ratner, if you are not familiar with him, got his start directing a bunch of music videos in the 1990s for some of my favorite artists, Mike. People like the Wu-Tang Clan, Jay-Z, Madonna. Cut his chops there, then got into making feature films, starting with the Chris Tucker vehicle, Money Talks. However, his biggest commercial success came with the Rush Hour trilogy, a series of films which is beloved by none other than our President of the United States.
Okay.
Another fun fact about Brett Ratner, he has also been accused of a lot of really gross things from a number of women. I would say that he was, victim is the wrong word to use here, Mike, but he was a casualty in the Me Too wars of 2017, perhaps rightfully so. However, Mike, I think you should know, you'll be heartened to hear he is prepared to make his big comeback in just a couple days from when we record this. Do you know the next film by Brett Ratner that's scheduled to be released?
Is it Rush Hour 4, 5? How many have they done?
They've only done 3, and apparently Trump himself has willed Rush Hour 4 with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker and Brett Ratner returning in the director's chair into production. However, the movie that Brett Ratner's big comeback is behind, the Melania Trump documentary,
Oh,
which is
God.
coming out on Amazon Prime in just a couple days. Let's move on. As far as the script for this film, Zach Penn, who had a story credit on X2, was tasked by the studio to write a draft. However, they simultaneously hired a man by the name of Simon Kinberg. Simon Kinberg should sound familiar to X-Men fans because he will go on to have a sizable role in subsequent X-Men movies coming down the pipeline. So this is not the last time we'll talk about him. But the point is, the two of them were working separately on drafts for the third X-Men film. Not really a great way to kind of make a movie. They caught wind of this act and were like, hey, maybe we should actually team up and sit down together and work on our scripts. So after they each made their initial pass, they got together and started collaborating on one final script. Unfortunately for them, this script, because it wasn't finished, found its way to Ain't It Cool News. And in an early example of just fan culture running amok on the internet, just got absolutely savaged by fanboys, by Harry Knowles, everybody on Ain't It Cool. It was tough. It's a tough look for them. It's a working script. I frankly side entirely with the screenwriters on this. I mean, that as a writer, like, I don't want anyone to see my first drafts. When I hit publish, you can go ahead and criticize whatever you want, but like, while I'm still working on something, don't do that. Like, that's not cool. Felt bad for the guys, but it also didn't portend great things for this film because, Mike, there was a lot of studio interference on the story ideas and where this wanted to go. They were very keen on including the Dark Phoenix storyline based on obviously the ending of X2, as well as the fact that it is probably the most iconic story arc in X-Men lore. However, the studio really was leaning towards doing the Gifted storyline, which is the first story arc in the Astonishing X-Men where there is a doctor who comes up with a cure for the mutants. With these two competing ideas, they welded them together into one script. There was also a number of potentially petty developments from studio executives. Because James Marsden had agreed to appear in Superman Returns, directed by Bryan Singer, the studio demanded that they kill Cyclops and, in fact, preferred that they kill his character off screen. However, the writers were like, if we're going to have to do it, we want to do it with Jean Grey and actually make it an emotional moment. Whether or not that succeeds or not is up to you, but the fact is, like, the studio was just, it sounds like, being kind of petty and wanted Cyclops out of there as a result of him deciding to work again with Bryan Singer.
That's so strange. I've never heard of a studio demanding to kill a character off screen before. That's really bizarre.
It's pretty wild. I think, again, probably the biggest single issue with X-Men: The Last Stand is that it just feels like there was so many studio notes that just went into this film. Not only that, it feels extremely rushed, and you can kind of tell that they were doing a tight deadlines and that they just wanted the movie to just hit all these beats. It's a very much an example of superhero films as product. Sadly, won't be the last example of that.
Can you imagine if Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan Kenobi off screen?
No, I can't, Mike.
They just fly away from the Death Star without him.
Man, it's tough. Those off-screen deaths. He still does kind of get killed off screen. You know, they don't actually show what happens to him. So.
And it completely breaks like the screenwriting rule of like, if someone dies off camera, it's safe to assume that they're not actually dead and they're going to come back at some point. So you're kind of waiting for Cyclops to come back through the whole movie, and he never does.
You're 100% right on that. It's very, very unsatisfying, and perhaps we'll discuss more about this particular plot choice later. As for the rest of the crew on X-Men: The Last Stand, they had to hire a lot of new people because a lot of the original crew had gone on with Bryan Singer to work on Superman Returns. So the two standouts to me, Mike, in this movie are the new cinematographer by the name of Dante Spinotti. He's an Italian cinematographer. He has an extremely varied filmography. He worked extensively with Brett Ratner throughout his career, but he's also been a regular with Michael Mann, and in fact was the cinematographer on arguably one of the 10 best films of the 1990s, a film by the name of Heat. Great cinematography in that film. Props to you, Dante Spinotti. Also did the cinematography for LA Confidential, one of my personal favorites, a movie that's come up multiple times on this podcast. Dante Spinotti, we tip our hat to you, sir.
What happened in this movie, man?
You know, Mike, I'll say it here. For all of the issues I have with this film, I don't think the cinematography is bad at all. In fact, I think it looks really good throughout. There's a number of sequences, really. Now, it may be more credit to the visual effects team than the cinematographer, but there's some really, I think, striking visual imagery in this film that we can credit him for. I think the slow-mo stuff all looks really amazing, honestly. And Spinotti, you're my guy. You did Heat. You get a free pass for life, bro. The other big new addition to the crew that I think is worth calling out, for me at least, is composer John Powell. I actually think the music throughout X-Men: The Last Stand is outstanding. I really enjoy really all of it. I think the scene in particular with Rogue and Iceman when they go ice skating is quite a beautiful melody. And I really like the haunting choral vocals when Jean Grey goes full Phoenix at the end in the climactic scene. I see you shaking your head, Mike. It seems like there may be a hard disagree.
Are you drinking my chain here? What's happening? Are you serious right now?
I am 100% sincere. I think the music in this movie is good.
Oh my God. No, I completely disagree with you. I had written down specifically that the music is significantly worse in this one than the previous two. They don't even bother bringing back the X-Men theme song from the first two movies. It's like just some canned music that they use as like sampling from other movies while they're trying to figure out what soundtrack to write, for their actual original score. It's just like, it's terrible, man. It doesn't fit any of the scenes at all. Completely disagree with you.
You may be right about that last point because I'm not sure necessarily that it fits the film itself. However, I do quite enjoy the melodies. I think that John Powell did a good job here, and we're just going to have to agree.
Sing me one of the melodies right now. Hum it out for me.
The one that's like... that one?
Very memorable.
It is amazing. So... Look, man, it's not Superman or Batman level, but it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. In addition to the new crew, we also get some new cast members, Mike. So let's talk about the new additions to the X-Men cast now. Up top, we got to go with number one, Dr. Henry Hank McCoy, aka Beast, as played by Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer, for the young people out there, was best known at this point, and still probably is, as playing a different doctor, Dr. Fraser Crane, on both Cheers and then its long-running spinoff, Frasier. Mike, we just threw on Frasier the other night. That show holds up great. It is truly one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. Just an amazing studio comedy, one of the best ever. This is the background of Kelsey Grammer, who now steps into an action sci-fi role as Dr. Hank McCoy. And let me tell you, it's not great. It's real rough. I can see on the one hand how the Beast as a character, right? He's extremely erudite. He's intelligent, well spoken. Like the contrast between his intellect and then his sort of scary, look is kind of the heart of the character. So I can see why they would immediately think of Kelsey Grammer. Nevertheless,
Yeah.
it's just a really flat performance. It feels like he doesn't really know how to integrate himself with the already established cast. And more than that, I just feel like he looks like a dude with blue makeup. You've got Nightcrawler, you've got Mystique, two different blue characters that have already existed in this film universe. Both of them look amazing. And here you just have Kelsey Grammer, Fraser Crane in blue paint and werewolf prosthetics, basically. Not a fan. What'd you think?
I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Kelsey Grammer because I'm not a fan. So I'm not going to just sit here and shit all over him. But to your point, yeah, it's on paper, this should work having him play Beast. But part of it, I'm sure it just comes down to not only just the makeup, but the script itself. Not having a lot for him to do, trying to find a way to shoehorn him into this already existing team. I don't know if they're planning on killing off characters throughout this movie, then yeah, I guess you do need to bring in some new blood, but they didn't really do it successfully, I thought.
The next big character introduced in this film is a new villain, Kane Marco, aka Juggernaut, as played by Vinnie Jones. Vinnie Jones got his kind of start. He was actually a professional footballer in England. By that, we mean in America, soccer player. He's fantastic in the early Guy Ritchie films like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. Not sure how great he is here either. Thoughts, Mike?
I read that Brett Ratner loved the I'm the Juggernaut bitch joke. He was such a huge fan of that he had it linked on his own personal website.
That seems to check out just based on what little I know. Second, third, fourth hand about Brett Ratner. That sort of checks out.
That actor is amazing as Bullet Tooth Tony in Snatch. I've actually just recently watched Snatch, and he's hilarious in that role.
Moving on. Next up is Kitty Pryde, as played by Elliot Page. I felt like this character is totally fine. It was very fleeting glimpse at Kitty Pryde in the previous movie. They get fleshed out a little bit more here. I think Elliot Page does their best, but again, pretty underwritten role.
Yeah, I agree. It's fine. Underwritten. Not much for her to do.
Last but not least, Warren Worthington III, aka Angel. First of all, I just got to say this. Warren Worthington III is like the greatest rich kid name of all time, maybe in all of fiction, in terms of just, immediately that's a spoiled ass rich kid. Angel's character arc in the comics is quite harrowing, I would say, Mike. Messing around with Apocalypse and getting the whole metal suit, becoming Archangel, I thought was, like, as a kid, that was really striking to me. You take this literal angelic figure and then turn him into one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Like, really, really harrowing stuff. We're not there yet in these films, so we simply get Angel, as played by the excellent actor, I would say, Ben Foster. To me, this is just the biggest missed opportunity. He's a great actor. I think the opening scene where he's trying to cut off his wings is heartbreaking, Mike. Like, that was a really powerful way to start the movie. It's like, you think of mutants like, oh, wow, it'd be cool to get this power or that power. Well, guess what? Some of these kids have wings sprouting out of their back and they can't hide it and they're horrified with their own bodies. I thought that was an amazing, amazing opening part of the film. And I just wish he literally had more than like 5 more lines in the entire movie because he's barely in this. And they just, again, just feels shoehorned in.
Completely shoehorned. I think, again, it comes down to the script, but the first 3 things that he says, he's just like, yeah. He's just answering every question that's thrown at him with just, yeah. And then he's got a couple sentences before he dramatically poses shirtless and then jumps out the window and then dives bomb the crowd below for some reason. I don't know. It's all very overly dramatic, but
yeah, totally.
Definitely an opportunity with one of the classic Golden Age comics original Team X-Men characters here with Angel and Beast coming in. You've got 2 of the OGs and they do nothing with them.
Absolutely. It would have been amazing if we had had a team up with those 2 and maybe Iceman, and just to kind of bring it all full circle. Obviously Cyclops is gone and Jean Grey's the villain here, but like if they just made some kind of nod to the fact that we did finally get the 5 original X-Men all together in a movie. There could have been something cool there, but alas, was not to be. There are a lot of extended cameos from other X-Men characters throughout the universe, whether it's Colossus, Leech, who is the kid that takes away the powers, kind of short appearances from Jubilee, Siren, Psylocke.
Psylocke is in this?
She's one of the students apparently. I didn't really clock her, but apparently she is there. And then of course we get our kid that can change TV with his mind. Love to see that guy again. This time
Remote.
this time he's running slideshows and stuff. It was always good. We get villains like Callisto, Kid Omega, which is funny because he's like Quill, but they just decided to call him Kid Omega in this movie for some odd reason, even though it's like he literally sports quills from his face. I don't know why you just don't call him Quill, because it's right there. He's a character in the comics. Anyway,
His name isn't Spike?
no, Spike is the guy that's throwing spikes out of his hands and battling Wolverine.
Oh, God. Okay.
Arclight, Ash, and Multiple Man. Now, I will actually give shout outs to Multiple Man. I think Multiple Man, he's only in 2 scenes, but that guy does some heavy lifting in this movie. Eric Dane, what a guy. And what I really enjoyed was there's very few, Mike, examples in this film of like cool use of mutant powers. That was something we raved about in the first 2 X-Men films, of them just coming up with really clever ways to show people's powers. That is the one exception in this movie, is the spy camera satellite being like, oh, the group's all here. They're all gathered around in this spot in the woods. And then it's like, it cuts to him and it's just Multiple Man throwing him off the scent. I thought that was very clever. Although, again, I don't really know why Multiple Man is joining with Magneto. He's always been a good guy to my knowledge.
Yeah, he's part of X-Force, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like, apparently they're just shifting him to the bad team on this one. So among all of these cameo appearances that I just mentioned, who was your favorite?
Well, it's not Quill, because that is his stupid power in general. I'm going to go ahead and give him my worst mutant power right there is Quill.
Okay, all right.
Porcupine Man. You got to be hugging someone in order to do any kind of damage to them. I should call him the human cactus. I think just kind of by default, all the other characters were pretty bad, and I thought they could have selected from an entire world of mutant characters. They kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel first, coming up with these cameoed characters. So I will just by default agree with you and go with Multiple Man as being the best of the bunch.
Amen. I agree with that. Yeah. There's so many great Rogues Gallery guys in the X-Men, and they just picked all these Arclight, do you even know who that is? I've never
No,
I've never read a comic with Arclight or Ash or Spike. Like, what are we doing here? Come on. Now, there were a couple firsts in this movie, Mike, I want to call out in terms of superhero films, things that will become staples down the line, but have never been done before. And the first was really a genuine technological breakthrough for all films, because from my understanding, this is the very first time in any film they had ever de-aged an actor. Now, there are rumors that this had been going on for some time with, just kind of taking away some of the like lines on people's faces in certain movies and sort of appeasing the actors secretly. However, they open this movie with a scene of Charles Xavier and Magneto visiting a young Jean Grey 20 years prior to the events of the films. I didn't think it looked horrible now. It is just literally them like removing the wrinkles and kind of making their faces look plastic. Actually wasn't the worst visual effect. Will get better as years go on. Sometimes it gets a little worse, but I didn't actually think this was like a terrible visual effect. Any thoughts on the de-aging scene?
Yeah, they looked a little plastic and fake, but it didn't necessarily bother me. I was just like, oh, they tried to de-age him. I guess at this point in time, I've gotten used to it. It's become more commonplace with even great directors like Martin Scorsese attempting to do it for an entire movie and not just one scene. So it didn't bother me. It may have bothered me originally when I saw this movie in 2006, but right now it does not.
Yeah, there was an interesting video I watched that had Patrick Stewart talking about like one of the things was he had to actually remember what it was like to walk 20 years earlier, that his like gait was different because like now that he's older, he has kind of a different gait and how he carried himself. And I thought that was a really interesting point as it relates to movies like The Irishman you're talking about, because like you can de-age Robert De Niro with the state-of-the-art technology, sure. he's moving like an old man in that movie. Like physically, he doesn't really look, like a spry young. And I didn't get that from Charles. Now, to be fair, he's actually walking in this movie, which is something he's not been able to do in previous X-Men films. But nevertheless, I thought that was an interesting point. The other big superhero innovation in this, the post-credit scene, Mike. I actually turned it off. I did not remember that there was a post-credit scene. To my knowledge, this is the first superhero post-credit scene. Basically, it's Moira McTaggart is helping a comatose patient. All of a sudden, he leans over and says to her, "Hello, Moira," in Charles Xavier's voice, and she says, "Charles?" That's it. It's not exactly like what we get in the MCU, where it's almost like a link in a chain that'll get you to the next movie. And if you want to even bring it up, right, it kind of undermines the dramatic stakes of Charles' death, frankly.
It totally does. Yeah.
Makes absolutely no sense. Like, he really did die and get exploded. Like, I can understand how Magneto can move the chess piece, and it's a way of implying that, like, the cure isn't completely definitive, that they're going to slowly get their powers back later.
More screenwrite undermining, though. It negates the whole conflict of the movie.
Fair. Totally fair. But I can at least see that. But, like, how did Charles Xavier come back from the dead and transfer his consciousness into a comatose patient? It raises a lot of questions. Nevertheless, I will give them credit for adding a little bonus scene after the credits, which is something we've all come to expect now from our superhero films.
Yeah, I wonder if that was Feige's influence, being that he was part of the X-Men production here for the first 3 movies. In fact, I know that it was his insistence that Beast say out loud, "Oh, my stars and garters."
Interesting.
So who knows? He may have had some more influence here with the post-credit scene too.
Boy, that's a great question. I'd love to ask Kevin that day. When we do our Marvel season, we have him on as one of our special guests, so we'll be sure to ask him about that.
Sounds good.
Without further ado, we got all that out of the way. Let's get into our categories, starting as we always do with best action scene. Mike, not that many action scenes to choose from in this movie. It was really odd.
Not that many.
We'll start like the movie does with the danger room danger. You got Iceman kind of showing off in front of Kitty. Now, we do get the fastball special here, which comic book fans have been looking for this for a while. For those who don't know, that's when Colossus picks up Wolverine and hurls him at whatever enemy. That's known as the fastball special in X-Men lore. So we get fan service nods there, but overall, this is the first scene in the danger room. Not great. Not great for me. Didn't love it.
Yeah, it starts off with the text on the screen, "In the not too distant future," which I have to laugh at, being a Mystery Science Theater fan, of course. Then we get Wolverine cracking wise the whole time, trying to light a cigar on some smoldering flames. Not even a really good look at a Sentinel, just its head that comes crashing down.
So disappointing.
Pretty disappointing in the scene, yeah.
If you're going to give a Sentinel, you can't just have the Sentinel in the fog and then his head just falls off, which, how did that work exactly? Like, Wolverine just fully decapitated him from being thrown from Colossus? Like, I just was not super impressed by that necessarily. I don't think this is going to be getting my vote for best action scene. Next up, we've got Unlikely Escapes. This is kind of let's just call it a 2-scene montage, starting with Warren, who's about to be the first mutant to get the cure. Got a couple questions about that, like what would happen? Would his wings just fall off his back? Would they like go back into his back? Like how would the cure look like on Warren? But in any event, decides I'm not going to do this, which again, I got character questions here, Mike. He was literally trying to cut off his own wings. You would think now, the second time we see him, he'd be completely willing and excited to be the first guy to get the cure, but I don't know, just some muddled character development there.
Yeah, 10 years later, I kind of assumed that he's grown to accept who he is a little better, and he's not so sure with,
Okay.
He's taking a pill to change who he is, and he's not ready to do that yet.
Fair enough. So he jumps out the building. Kind of a cool shot of him soaring over the crowd. I kind of did like that. Being someone that lived in the Bay Area for a little while, I do enjoy the shots of him flying around the Bay and near the Golden Gate Bridge. And he does look quite angelic, so we'll go with that. That leads straight into Magneto flipping all the cars to orchestrate Mystique's escape, and she kills the guard with her feet. We meet Multiple Man and the Juggernaut, and then, of course, Mystique just gets cured, and Magneto's like, well, nice knowing you. You're done. We're done. you're a human now. I can't be your friend.
All right, babe.
Didn't like that. Even from a villain, just did not like that. Our next big action scene, a visit to Jean's house. Jean Grey has decided to go full Phoenix at this point. Everybody shows up all at the same time. We'll talk more about this in a moment. Let's get into the Golden Gate Bridge sequence. So this is like pretty cool, I have to say. Golden Gate Bridge already appeared in Superman. Pretty iconic set piece for many different action movies and just movies in general. Planet of the Apes, of course, great scene there. God, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole Wikipedia article about Golden Gate Bridge on film, but I did see a video, Mike, where Kevin Feige was waxing poetic about this set piece because he's like, I told the people at Fox, if we're going to do this, we got to go even bigger. And I remembered an X-Men comic from back in the day where Magneto was in New York and he took New York hostage. And the first thing he did was just break all the bridges with his powers. And I thought, we got to incorporate something like that in this
Oh,
movie.
wow.
So
Okay.
he's going to actually bend the Golden Gate Bridge to get it all the way to Alcatraz. Now, one thought that I did have, and they confirmed, they did actually take the measurements of the bridge itself. And yes, you could actually split the bridge and bend it all the way over to Alcatraz Island in the bay.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, they built scale models. They actually had a 1/12 size bridge that they shot the effect when the bridge crashes to the ground when Magneto finally lets it go. They built that themselves. So I actually thought, like, this is a really cool visual effect. It's a cool set piece, and their mix of kind of practical effects as well as CGI on this, I thought worked really well. Our last big action scene, the mutant melee on Alcatraz, Mike. We got the Royal Rumble of all the bad mutants against all the good mutants. You got some soldiers in there. Phoenix is showing up and laying waste to everything. And of course, the big climax. I will again give some credit towards using powers in a clever way. Wolverine would be the only one that could stop her because of his healing ability and his adamantium skeleton.
Yeah.
Like, he's the only guy that's not going to get killed from her. I did like the sort of callback where, you know, initially when she comes back, she's like, just kill me now, kill me now. And he obviously can't do it because they're in the mansion, and just, you don't just kill your love of your life arbitrarily, or one of the loves of his life. Many, many loves in Logan's life.
Yes.
But, you know, he has to do the deed. And so that was a little bit clever. That being said, I found like the overall climax like pretty underwhelming, generally speaking. My vote is going to go to a visit to Jean's house. I actually thought this is a really sick set piece, like, overall. It doesn't have anything on Nightcrawler's White House attack, in my opinion, but this is, to me, by far the best one in the film. There's some really good Wolverine versus Juggernaut stuff, Storm versus Calypso. There's a shot where Juggernaut throws Wolverine through the ceiling and then he falls through the ceiling in like the next room over. I thought that was pretty cool.
A different part of the ceiling.
Yeah, and then like when she's going full Phoenix and he's literally like climbing along the ceiling, like using his claws to like stay up. Thought that was cool. Overall, I actually really thought that was a above average set piece for a superhero film. So that one is clearly the number one pick in my mind. What do you got?
Clearly, you say. Clearly the best pick.
To me, it was, I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge part I said was great too, so that would be 1B, I guess.
I would not say clearly because it kind of annoyed me that Magneto's just reduced to cowering in the corner of the kitchen while all this is happening with Jean Grey. It's like there's a ton of things that are made of metal in this house that you could stop her with. I don't know why he's just sniveling over there in the corner. It was really bothering me. So I think not clearly, in my opinion. So because of that,
it's a fair criticism.
I kind of by default am going with the brainchild of Kevin Feige and the lifting of the Golden Gate Bridge. It sounds like it had a lot of great production behind it from what you just talked about with the scale models and things like that. And I always appreciate scale models in movies and wish that we would go back to those actually a little bit because they look great most of the time. Yeah, it's a great show of Magneto's powers. It kind of gives you a sense of, what he can truly do. He's so powerful enough he can lift this gigantic structure just by himself and do what he needs with it, And yeah, I mean, it serves the plot. It gets us to where we're going for the end of the movie. And my pick for best action scene.
Next category, best non-action scene. Well, I don't really want to adjudicate all the various things. I'm not sure there are various things. The one that I'm going to shout out is Professor Xavier and Logan debating the ethics of mind control as it relates to Jean Grey. So Jean Grey is back in Xavier's mansion. They've found her after her whole death and resurrection at Lake Alkaline.
Alkali.
Whatever, Mike. Whatever it's called, you know.
It's not the
And
X-Wing either, Mark. It's the Blackbird.
get out of here. In any event, yeah, I thought this really hinted at what a better movie it could be. I like the idea of like the actual debate, right? Of like what gives you the right to go into her brain and to like cut off part of her personality. Like, who do you think you are? And I think the movie bears that whole idea out in a lot of respects, right? Because it really comes down to she needed this procedure, right? Her powers are too strong. She actually did need this to happen to her. And it kind of also spoke to a fairly clever way, in my mind, fairly clever, not full on clever, fairly clever way that they incorporated Phoenix without actually having to go full cosmic powers the way that it comes from the comic books. They talked about this, the screenwriters. It just kind of wouldn't have made sense to have this particular version of the X-Men fly into outer space, encounter some space force that then takes over Jean's body. Like, it just really wouldn't have fit with the tone of the other movies. This was somewhat of a clever workaround where she's kind of always had this split personality that's sort of been waiting in her mind, and we haven't seen it because Professor X shut it down, when she was still a little girl. I don't know. There was just some things in this scene that felt like this was an example of what a better version of this movie could have been, and so that's my pick for best non-action scene. What do you got?
How do I choose? How do I choose? There's so many. There is a lot of non-action in this movie.
That's a great point. It's a great point.
There's a lot of non-action here. I don't really know. I mean,
if you want to settle it with like a 16-way tie for just all the other scenes are equally good, that's fine.
Sure. That's my pick. Let's go.
We'll go with that. Our next category is secret layers and costuming. I gotta say, man, real disappointed on all levels on this one. Magneto is looking amazing, as he always does. They kind of gave him this time, like, he's got real droopy sleeves, which I really kind of liked on this. Like, Magneto is always looking so goddamn fly in these movies. Like,
yeah, you're a Harry Potter kid, so you definitely like the droopy sleeves.
I love it, man. Magneto is looking fresh to death in these movies. Everyone else, it is rough, man. I did not like this new iteration of the black leather costumes with the like piping being colored. Kitty Pryde in particular having like the pink piping. I was just like, oh, this is embarrassing. Like, you see, Mike, the piping was pink because she's a girl.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the symbolism there. For our listeners at home, the color pink is associated with women. Kitty Pryde is a girl, therefore. Yeah, they're trying to do something a little different from the awful costumes in the first two. I'll give them credit for that. Nah, man, I was kind of cringing when they're all meeting up in the room. I do kind of like Hank McCoy's jacket. I will say it doesn't fit him quite right, as he makes a joke about, but it's a cool jacket.
They didn't even put Wolverine in the black leather suit this time. They just let him walk around in his brown leather jacket.
He is in the suit at the end.
No, he's in his tank top.
No, he's in a full X suit, man. Yeah, because they all are like Iceman. Like, all the kids are like, we got to join you on this mission.
Does he take it off then? Because I remember he's in the tank top when he goes to Jean.
Yeah, I think it's because she like peels it off of him when they all fight. Yeah, when she's like using her Jean Grey powers. But yeah, he's definitely wearing a suit, man. It's all right. It's tough. It's tough stuff.
A lot about this movie I seem to have blacked out of either intentionally or not. And I just watched it yesterday.
And then, like, the secret layers, Magneto and his merry band of bandits are just meeting in the woods. They're just, like, going full Robin Hood to just, like, hey, guys, like, meet me in the woods.
Meet me in Muir Woods. We're just going to hang out over there.
We're just going to camp in Muir Woods. That's a good secret hideaway for, secret lair for the villain. Like, what are we doing? Not good stuff. All right, Mike, this is your chance to shine. I tried to keep track, but our next category, total destruction. How many people died in this movie?
Yeah.
I know you kept very close track on the last X-Men movie, so what do you got for your count on this one?
Well, this one's a little tough because some of the deaths were redacted or retracted,
Fair.
in either later movies or in the same movie. So it's
Okay, well
it's kind of
let's
hard to
let's
tell.
let's establish here that the post-credit scene with Charles Xavier doesn't count. He died. He did die. Let's just assume that. And same with Cyclops.
And Jean Grey. So we got three. I'd say anybody who was in the cars that Magneto was crushing when he was busting Mystique out from their mobile prison.
I got that one too. I'm counting 8.
He full on like soda cans this car. So anybody who's inside is smashed to a pulp. So you got 8 there.
I counted 4 cars, 2 to a car. We'll go with 8. So now we're at 11.
There's a few dudes in the woods that Wolverine kills as he's trying to sneak up on the camp.
I got 6.
I was gonna say
Counted 6 in that one. So we're at 17 now. Don't forget the guard that Mystique was like, I'm going to kill you. And then she does.
Oh, I did forget about the guard. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he gets called out. So now we're at 18.
I got to assume that during the final. Well, first of all, I got to assume that during Magneto moving the bridge, that some cars were falling into the water and people in those cars maybe didn't get off in time, things like that.
100%. I rounded that to 12. I'm just going to go with 12. So now we're at
Okay.
30.
And then during the final battle itself, I got to assume that some soldiers were killed by some mutant powers and some mutants were killed by soldiers.
I mean, Jean Grey alone wastes like a full platoon, which I'm going to go with like 50-ish.
Okay.
Like 50-ish soldiers wasted. There's a mutant who's climbing. He gets cured while he's like sticking to something.
Oh yeah, was it Toad?
He's called like a knoll. They like made a point of saying, no, that's not actually Toad, which is totally dumb. But yeah, he ate it.
We own the rights to Toad, but we're not going to say his name.
Ash, the heat breath mutant, absolutely like just uses heat breath on a couple there. So I think at this point we're probably looking at about 90. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I was going to round it up to 100 just to call it even, but
Let's do that.
90 to 100, yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds good.
90 to 100, yeah. And it's no X2, millions of people worldwide as a result, but pretty high death toll.
Much smaller scale, this movie, compared to
Yeah,
X2.
smaller scale. But three significant deaths, in Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Professor X. So, maybe what you lose in quantity, you make up with in quality of character to a certain extent. Next category. Evil scheme. How good was the evil scheme in this movie? So, Mike, I'm going to try to figure out what the evil scheme really was in this movie because it's just not as clear as in previous X-Men films. But what I believe, there's a couple different things going on with the Brotherhood of Mutants. They are, number one, trying to scare off mutants from getting the cure. That was a pretty good job, but I still feel like if you're determined to get the cure, like you're going to find a way to get a cure. You got to think they're going to distribute this throughout the country. They're not just one clinic in New York, right? Destroy Worthington Labs, right? Like that's one of the goals here as well. You got to get rid of Worthington Labs, get it out of here. But the thing to me is like, is that even where they're manufacturing the cure?
Yeah, because they're getting it from the kid.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So they're like, we got to kill this kid. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, he's like, destroy the source, Magneto says. Get to the kid and kill him. Well, my problem with the scheme is that it's all reactive. There is no plan. It's not like Magneto is hatching the scheme or William Stryker has been hatching the scheme for like years at a time where they have a plan and it relies on us doing this and getting these key people involved. And that's going to lead us to wipe out the human race, allowing mutants to reign supreme. No, it's just, these things are happening in the world. And so we're reacting to it. And which I guess is realistic in a sense, but it's not very engaging from a story perspective to just watch these characters who don't really know what they're doing just kind of react to a situation and react violently. And that's really all it kind of boils down to.
Completely agree. And that goes with the third part of this, which is just Jean Grey. What is her goal? What's her motivation? She actually isn't like a villain in the sense of like, this is something I want. She's just overpowered and is like, I have powers and I'm just going to destroy people. There's no actual thing there, like it just doesn't.
Yeah.
What does Magneto think she's going to do? Like help him get the kid and kill him? It just doesn't really make sense. So yeah.
She has no motivation.
No motivation, bad schemes. All right, it's time to talk best and worst mutants. If I may, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and go first. I'm going to give my best mutant award to Professor Charles Xavier. May he forever rest in peace. Professor X wasn't afraid to make that hard call in partitioning off part of Jean Grey's head. Now, Wolverine calls him out on this. This is a very difficult decision. The ethics are muddled and confusing. And yet he was right to make that call, and only he was the one that could make it because he's the only guy that has the power to do so. He also earned a truly tragic death in what was easily the greatest action sequence in this film when he gets killed. Clearly, yeah, his death, it's not affecting whatsoever. I think that's where this movie misses. It's just none of the sadness hits. Like when anyone dies, you're not like shocked or sad. You're just kind of like, what? Why? Huh? So I'm not going to sit here and say like, man, I was moved to tears with Professor X's sacrifice in that moment. Nevertheless, I do think he did the right thing. He made some hard choices. Best mutant of X-Men, The Last Stand, Professor Charles Xavier. What do you got?
Well, I've given him his flowers in previous episodes, but again, I just kind of think it goes to either defaults Magneto or Wolverine because they're kind of the two most significant characters in this movie. They're doing all the heavy lifting from an acting perspective, especially Ian McKellen. He's actually a pretty good breath of fresh air in this movie, surrounded by really bad actors all the way through. He is bringing his usual gravitas to the role, and God bless him making something out of this terrible script. So, and as I said earlier, he has an amazing display of his own powers, lifting the bridge, showing how powerful he really can be. I think it's got to be Magneto for me.
3 for 3, Magneto. You're just a Magneto man.
I really am, especially in this original trilogy. Once we get to First Class and other movies, it may not be the case.
For my worst mutant award, I'm going to give this one to Juggernaut. I don't want to cast any aspersions on Vinnie Jones. You are the man. You still scare the hell out of me, even though you're 60 years old. I know you could take me, bro. This isn't a shots fired at you. It's just quite simply that, like, for those of us who have read the X-Men comics, the Juggernaut is like a hulking mess. He's huge. He is absolutely huge. The whole thing isn't that, like, once he starts running, nothing can stop him, like they say in this movie, which is so dumb. So dumb. Like, that doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about? Like, he runs into a wall and it stops him.
Oh, well, he was next to the kid who took his powers away at that point.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, that's a good point. But still, his whole thing is like, he's absolutely massive. The way that he's portrayed in Deadpool 2, that's the Juggernaut I'm here for. That's what I'm talking about. Like, a mutant so dangerous, he's got to be isolated, put in shackles all times, like left on his own. That is Kane Marco. I mean, they added a little bit of heft to him, but yeah, just really wasn't a fan of the way that they portray Juggernaut. Not at all what I wanted to see in a live-action X-Men film.
Did you know he's actually not a mutant?
Yeah, like he gets his powers from a god or something, and
this weird ruby diamond that has this power that just gives him the power to be big and strong.
And he's Professor X's stepbrother as well.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
Yeah,
I forgot about
that.
Yeah.
They have a whole family history there too. So none of that's there. He's just kind of this Cockney British guy that I was just like, yeah, didn't like it. What about you? Who was your worst mutant, Mike?
I've already given you, by the way. It was Cactus Man, whatever his name is.
Kid Omega?
No, Porcupine.
I mean, the character's name, Mike, is Kid Omega.
Oh, it was? Okay. He's terrible. I love that actor. I think he's great in Lost as Miles. But come on, man. That's just a terrible mutant power. It's a stupid power. It's really, really stupid.
And now it's time for our favorite part of the show, a little segment we call I've Got Questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
Questions. Questions that need answering.
Too many questions. There's too many questions. There's just too many. Yeah. I'll ask the questions.
Mike, why don't you start us off with your questions tonight?
Okay, so I was writing a bunch of it down, and it kind of, my notes just devolved into just being like, I hate this movie sucks, this is really bad. I'm going to avoid a lot of that while going through my notes here. My first one is just, how is it that everybody just knows where Magneto's secret camp is? So Wolverine just kind of darts out of the mansion, and then literally the next scene, he's like sneaking up, which by the way is in, as we established, upstate New York. And then next scene, he's in Muir Woods, California, sneaking up on Magneto's camp without any sort of exposition whatsoever on how he knows where they are. And also, Mystique apparently knows where they are because she's later shown giving up the location of the camp to the government. How does she know? The camp hasn't even been established yet before her powers are taken away.
100%.
So that didn't make any sense to me at all.
Great question. And it's funny too, because it's like she definitely doesn't know because she got ditched. So she probably was like, I bet they're just set up in near woods, right? Wouldn't you just, because they're going to attack him. Like, we all know that. And they're like, thanks for the info. They're like, no, this girl, give it up. No hell like a woman scorned, like dropping some sexist stuff in there. Yeah, great point. For me, my first question, they're just going to let a biotech firm build their headquarters on Alcatraz Island next to the prison. Guess what? Alcatraz is reopened for business, and this very specific mutant biotech firm is just going to be able to build their lab there. That's just a thing that's happening in this world. Like,
yeah, not a ideal setup for a cutting edge laboratory when you have this building that's just completely eroded by the sea salt air over there. It's
totally.
just totally eroded. It's 100 years old.
Yeah, makes no sense to me.
Okay, the first two movies didn't do this, but for some reason they felt that it was necessary to introduce like a ranking system of the mutant powers. Like, oh, he's a class 3 mutant, he's a class 5 mutant. Why are we doing this? This is dumb. We don't need this. Is it just to establish that Jean Grey is all powerful?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Just say that. Just say she's even more
Yeah.
powerful than Magneto. That's all we need.
Yeah, there is a thing in X-Men lore that they introduced where it's like class 5. It's like basically any mutant who is the most powerful at whatever their set is, right? Storm is a class 5 because she can control the weather and no one else can do that. Magneto's a class 5 because he can control metal, no one else. And that kind of makes sense to me, like in comics continuity and certain things, right? But like, that's a great point. We don't really need this classification system in this. Where would Wolverine fit in there, right? Like, it's weird. It's a weird addition. I totally agree. My next one, I talked about him as my worst mutant of X2, Pyro. And he explicitly says in that movie, I can only manipulate fire and I can't create it. And in this movie, he's throwing fireballs everywhere. He's just throwing fire all over.
He's got the lighter thing in his sleeve.
Okay.
That anytime he opens his hand, it like automatically creates a flame for him.
I wanted to talk through with that because I thought there was one, like, I think it's when he battles Iceman, you kind of see it flick a little or something. So that's the situation. He's got like a custom coat.
Yeah, he shows it. I think it's in the scene where they're all kind of, when Magneto shows up and they're all trying to figure out how they're gonna get back at the humans, and someone walks up on Pyro and he's like, and he like opens his hand and you can see that he's got the lighter sticking out of his sleeve right there.
Okay, all right. That just kind of bothered me because it just seems like overpowered him really quickly. Oh yeah, he can do this now. It's like, he couldn't do that in the last movie, so I'm glad you clarified that for me. Cross that off the questions.
I have a lot of questions around what happens to the mansion and Charles Xavier's estate after he passes away. What happens with the school? Are they still trying to teach there? Wouldn't the IRS like swoop in and try and take possession of the school right away in this giant mansion, facility, valuable property?
Is it going to probate or? Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Has he made out his will to Storm? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah. Well, also his gravestone is marked father. Never a single mention anywhere about his kid at all. And like in any of the movies, if you know the comic book lore, like you kind of know his kid, but like not in the movies. Wait a minute, he has a father? He doesn't even have a girlfriend. Where does his father stuff come from? Like, fair enough. This one was kind of weird to me, and it's just like a general question, but the scene where we don't need a mutant cure, it's all just people. Like, none of them are mutants in that crowd. It didn't look like. Maybe they were just like disguised normal mutants that like had regular, normal, non-X-Men type powers.
Just regular protesters.
Yeah, I know that's good allyship. Good for you. I agree with you. I support that cause. I would go to that protest too, but it was still just kind of odd to me. Like, we got to scatter a few mutants in there. You can't just be like, equal rights. You know what I'm saying? So...
this will be my last one because I again, a lot of my notes are just like, why is this movie doing this bad thing that's stupid from the screenplay? So the last one I'll say is when Cyclops goes to Alkali Lake, he's hearing Jean's voice and he, in a moment of frustration, shoots his laser beam at the middle of the lake, and then a whirlpool happens, and then he's blinded by fog, and then all of a sudden Jean is there. Did she like come out of this whirlpool? Was she just chilling underwater or something? I didn't understand any of that.
It's very confusing. And I think what bothered me too was like, they just didn't even explore in any way, shape, or form how she came back. Most movies, you need some kind of cursory, even one line of exposition of just like, it went black, and then the next thing I know, I was on the beach with Cyclops.
Oh, they did have one line where Professor X was like, she enveloped her, or she cocooned herself in a
There we go, the
telekinetic
psychic
energy.
thing. Ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, your point is well taken. It's extremely confusing.
The whirlpool was what confused me the most.
Why you gotta make a whirlpool? How does that even work? Why does laser blast into water create a whirlpool? My last question is, understandably, the news of a cure is upsetting for the mutant community. But why are they holding their like, let's get together and talk about it meeting in like a derelict church that's just been left behind, and there's just like, it's either under construction, or you would think a regular church would be willing to be like, we welcome all of God's creatures, human and mutant, and they could just go to like the regular cool Methodist church. But instead they just have to go to like this construction site church to talk about one of the most important and pressing issues of their time. Like, that just felt really depressing and just kind of off to me. I did not really like that part. So, well, Mike, it's time for me to explain what this profound X-Men film is all about. As we have discussed in our previous movies, X-Men are known for their allegories around racism, homophobia, any kind of prejudice you can kind of plug into the X-Men. That's what makes them such a powerful and evocative text to analyze. Now, I'd like to tell you, Mike, that this theme is one of self-acceptance, that the X-Men with more challenging mutations like Beast and Rogue can finally make peace with who they are. But then the ending scene for Rogue completely undermines that idea, because she's like, I got the cure, Bobby, like, we can finally make out, even though literally early in the movie Wolverine's like, I hope you're not just doing this for a boy. And then it's like, no, it turns out she's very much doing this for a boy. The other thing that was really disturbing to me, Mike, was that in doing the research, they actually shot an alternate ending of that scene where she's like, I didn't go through with it. I just couldn't betray who I am. And they instead decided to go through with the ending where she's just like, I can finally kiss you, Bobby. Like, what?
Terrible. Wow. That's amazing.
Absolutely terrible. So again, I thought this movie was trying to send a message about self-acceptance, but that was clearly undermined with the Rogue character arc in this. And instead, I would argue that the big theme here is about the danger of unchecked power. Professor X understood that the Phoenix Force was too powerful to remain unchecked, no matter the muddled ethics of unilaterally deciding to partition this part of Jean Grey's mind. And you know what? He was right. It literally cost him his life to confirm this. Because, Mike, when certain individuals possess unchecked power, be they mutants, presidents of the United States, or even agents of law enforcement, the consequences can be deadly and tragic. We see this in X-Men: The Last Stand, and sadly, we're seeing it in the news this week. Heavy themes, pertinent time. Perhaps you get my gist.
If I may, I had a different read.
Please.
I felt that this movie is very much trying to promote transgender rights. And the idea behind, I'm not comfortable with who I am, so I'm going to take a pill to change who I am, is something that was kind of ahead of its time here in 2006, especially when you consider that we have Ellen going into Elliot Page as a supporting role in this movie, all in the name of just trying to be accepted and not persecuted by society.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. Yeah, I think you could read it that way, certainly. And as you pointed out, the fact that Elliot Page is in this movie kind of underscores that in an unintentional way, but nevertheless, I can see that reading of this film for sure. Well, God bless our trans brothers and sisters too, Much respect. I don't know if there's ever going to be a transgender shot that you can take. Well, there kind of is already, I guess.
Yeah, it takes, hormones.
There you go. Interesting. That's an interesting take, Mike. I see it. I can see it.
Whatever the case may be, the end of the day of this movie is pretty muddled when it comes to what it's trying to say.
I think that it would be safe to say that both of our analysis and deep readings of this text may be reaching just a little bit. Just a little bit. This is actually a perfect segue into our final segment of the night, the final verdict. If you're new to listening to our show, we rank all of the movies that we watch on a scale of classic, great, good, okay, bad, and terrible. Mike, if it's okay with you, I'm going to kick us off.
Go ahead.
I thought a lot about this. Now, this is one of the most disparaged movies in the comic book canon. I remember when it came out, people were just massively disappointed, including myself. Doing some research for this and just looking into it, there's a couple issues with this movie that I think are really apparent, right? So number one, it just was rushed by the studio, right? So they just had to get it out the next summer. They couldn't wait. They actually wanted to stick it to Bryan Singer and put it out the same summer that Superman came out so that they could kind of literally go one-on-one with him to see whose movie did better. And actually X-Men did do better than Superman at the domestic box office. But at the end of the day, all the studio notes and all this stuff, it really screwed up the movie. The other thing that I felt watching this, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. It's the pacing is so wrong in this movie. It's like fast paced, but it's because the pacing is just one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. None of it actually hits. It should really hit you when Professor X dies. It should really hit you when Cyclops dies. All these moments, all these emotional beats, they didn't carry any actual weight because I felt like the movie was so quick to just move on to the next thing, keep it going, keep it going. They got Brett Ratner to make this movie. He is like a work for hire director. This isn't someone who brings style. Say what you will about Bryan Singer, but that man actually had vision. He had like stylistic panache with what he's doing. He knew how to shoot things in ways that felt unique and fresh and mature and not just like corny. This is just like terribly done. It's not like that was so bad, but it's not made in any way that's memorable. It's just, okay, on to the next scene, on to the next thing. Oh, cool, we did the danger room sequence. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that. And so the pacing, I think, was more than anything what really threw me off of this movie. So at the end of the day, it actually wasn't as bad as I had remembered it being. It falls to me in the range of okay. You can see the better version of this movie while you're watching it. None of the action scenes are memorable, nor are the uses of mutant powers. At the same time, the crew is too talented, including composer John Powell.
Boo.
Too talented to make this really bad. For me, Mike, the result is like something that's in the mushy middle, right? It's not bad enough to enjoy as a guilty pleasure, nor is it good enough to recommend. And in that sense, okay is probably the worst place your superhero movie can land. So this is kind of a damning you with faint praise. I didn't think it was bad or terrible. I just thought it was like, okay. And that's really kind of the worst place you can be. What were your thoughts?
You know, the pacing is, like you said, it's really bad, and it's just because there's no setup between scene to scene. They move from one scene to the next without any kind of connection. Like I said, Wolverine goes from New York to Muir Woods in a single cut, a single edit. And we have characters that are just kind of pointless. Jean Grey doesn't really do anything. She could destroy everybody in that final battle and accomplish the mission of killing the kid if she wanted to, but instead she just stands there and stares at everybody until it's finally her turn after the conflict is done. Then, okay, now I'm going to destroy everything. Nothing in this movie makes sense. There's a lot of really bad lines. I noticed one at the beginning too, where the professor has like a weird psychic moment that affects everybody in the mansion. Wolverine and Storm immediately run down to where the professor is. Storm's like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. Let's go find the professor. It's just like, what? You're just going to blindly rush in to something you don't know what's happening. This is just really bad, really poorly written. I did not have fun watching this. I don't think you can have fun watching this, even if you're like drinking with friends or anything like that. This is not something that you can poke a lot of fun at. So I'm going to go a step below bad and I'm going to call it terrible. Because I don't ever want to watch this movie again, be it ironically or drunkenly or anything like that. I didn't want to watch it after the first time I saw it 20 years ago. I'm calling it terrible.
Wow. All the way at the bottom. Terrible.
Yep. This is the worst X-Men movie. This
Wow.
is it. This is the worst X-Men movie of all time.
Whew. All right, buddy. Wow. Okay. Man, that's... Whew, let's go. I love to have this disagreement here. I think in some ways this is a semantic debate, right? Because like I'm not praising this movie by any means, but I'm saying it's competently made enough that I cannot say that it's bad, but like your point is that I just don't ever want anything to do with this movie ever again. And therefore it's terrible. And I don't disagree with that take either. Like I do not want to ever rewatch this. I'm good. I'm good on
Yeah.
this one forever.
Yeah, I'm good on it forever. It's not just that I don't want to watch it ever again. It's just like I said, the script is so bad that nothing makes sense, and we have characters that aren't doing anything, and there's really nothing fun happening there, except for like the Golden Gate Bridge scene. That's like the only part where I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie, the other hour and a half of it, I'm just not having that experience at all.
That's a fair point. It's not a fun movie. It's not fun. There's no fun in this. And the other X-Men movies, they have more serious themes, and they, it's like thematically they're more rich, but yeah, it's a really fair point. Wow. All right, let's go. Terrible. Okay, I love to hear
We
it.
could average it out to bad if you want between the two of us.
Listen, at the end of the day, we're not recommending this movie to anyone, right? I don't think if you want to average it to bad, that's fine. But man, it's not a good film.
I can meet you in the middle for sure.
Our final categories, we're going to talk about our recommendations. So I'll go ahead and get us started. Comic book recommendations. So Moira McTaggart makes pretty short appearances in this movie, I would say. I believe she's in First Class, but it's been a while, so we'll see if she turns back up again. But in case she doesn't, I did want to recommend a comic book in which her character actually has a significant role. And those are the House of X and Powers of X series that came out, I want to say like 2020, and they're kind of separate issues, but the story arcs kind of go back and forth between the two different limited series. And it's an excellent book. Jonathan Hickman is the writer on that. And essentially the idea is that the X-Men are done at this point with humanity. They're not even trying to integrate themselves. They've struggled so long and so hard that they have built their own mutant utopia, essentially, and are now basically demanding that we have our own sovereign nation of just mutants. And we will be the ones who administer all the justice to other mutants. And Magneto and Professor X are working together on this. And what they did in a very, very clever way, in my opinion, is that they introduced a power set to Moira McTaggart of reincarnation. So every time Moira McTaggart dies, she's reincarnated her moment of birth with the memories of the last time she lived. And so throughout her various lifetimes, she's sort of slowly architecting the ultimate solution, because it always ends with humans and mutants fighting each other, and then them building sentinels, and then the sentinels taking over. And so she's trying to find a way out of this endless cycle of violence. It's a super, super compelling idea, and it's really, really cool the way they execute it. Yeah, I would give it a very high recommendation for all X-Men and comic book fans out there. House of X and Powers of X. Mike, what do you got?
Well, I want to thank you for reminding me that this comic existed, because I was struggling to find a comic recommendation for this terrible or bad movie. But Avengers versus X-Men, which was a comic that came out in 2016, would be a decent companion piece, I guess, if you needed something to wash the taste out of your mouth from this movie, because it does feature heavily the Phoenix entity coming down and once again possessing not just one mutant this time, but 5 of them. And one of them being Cyclops. I forget off the top of my head who the other 4 are. But the Phoenix divides itself amongst the 5 of them, and they become godlike beings that decide to reshape the world in their own way. And so it's up to the Avengers to stop them, because, that takes away freedom and all that good stuff. So the freedom to make our own decisions and not be enslaved by this cosmic entity. It was mixed reviews when it came out, but I remember enjoying it when I read it, and I thought it was a pretty interesting premise and something kind of fresh and new that they did with the Phoenix Force. And yeah, it's pretty good. If you can find it cheap, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too. And I like how basically the idea is like they actually do reshape the world into like a great utopia. It's amazing. But it's just like they've taken away the world's free will, and they still have to live under their rules. And so like that kind of goes against the principles. So it sort of has a good idea of free will versus like an autocratic utopia type stuff. It's a good comic. I enjoyed it. For my film recommendation, I am going to go with one of the 2 films in which Ian McKellen earned an Academy Award nomination. Mike, you could probably guess one of those films. Which of the Lord of the Rings do you think he deserved it for? Because it's pretty obvious it's going to be one of those.
He deserved it for Fellowship, I thought.
That's the one. He got supporting actor for Fellowship of the Ring, and he got Best Actor nomination for the movie Gods and Monsters. This was released in 1998. He didn't win the Academy Award, but he plays James Whale, who is the director of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. It co-stars Brendan Fraser, who later won an Academy Award, as well as Lynn Redgrave, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role as his housekeeper. It also won the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for Bill Condon, who went on to have quite a bit of success with Chicago and some other films. Yeah, I rewatched it. You know, it's been a while. It's a really complex drama, and James Whale is kind of a pervy gay dude who keeps hitting on Brendan Fraser's character in somewhat inappropriate ways. It's about his tortured life and how difficult it was for him to be actually an out gay man at the time, but how much he had to hide it, and his own struggles with his own personal history, having served in World War I, the trauma that left him with, and the difficulty of never really being able to express who he was as an actual person. It's a really, really great performance from Ian McKellen, who, if you may not know, is gay in real life. And so I think maybe it pulled in some of his stuff in his own life. He's just outstanding in the film. Brendan Fraser is also really good, and definitely if you're someone who's only seen like Encino Man and some of those more light roles, is like really good in this film. Lynn Redgrave, as I mentioned, earned an Academy Award nomination. So if you're kind of looking for more of a low-key drama, acting showcase type film, Gods and Monsters is a really good example of what Ian McKellen can do outside of the superhero and fantasy milieu. Mike, what do you got for your recommendation?
I'm going to go with the Ben Foster connection and recommend from 2016 the movie Hell or High Water. Ben Foster and Chris Pine are bank robbers in Texas. It's a pretty exciting movie. It shows Texas culture very well, I think, alongside with a movie like No Country for Old Men. It kind of captures the spirit of the people in the community. Jeff Bridges is once again showing his kind of Western cowboy, Rooster Cogburn-esque archetype that he usually portrays, but he does it well in this movie as well. A lot of it is just kind of about the morality of what they're doing and questioning whether or not they should be taking money from banks in such a potentially violent way. And Ben Foster plays his trigger-happy brother who is constantly at odds with Chris Pine, and it's pretty good drama all around. I think if you don't know Ben Foster that well, that would be a good solid introduction for what he's capable of doing.
Hell yeah, great reco. Taylor Sheridan script. So if you're into any of the Yellowstone or any of those, it was written by Taylor Sheridan, who's behind all those shows. Great movie. And to your point, let's rob banks that are actually ripping us off and doing mortgage crises. Excellent moral setup for the show, for the film, and great Jeff Bridges performance. You've got the actually superhero cinema actor trifecta there: Foster, Pine, and Jeff Bridges, all of whom we'll be talking about in these movies. So excellent recommendation, Mike. And with that, we have reached the end of another episode of Superhero Cinema Club. But don't worry, we'll be back again next week with a new chapter in the X-Men saga, taking it back to the past. We'll be discussing X-Men First Class. I'm really excited for this one, Mike. I have not rewatched this movie in quite some time, but I remember really enjoying it. This might be the hardest recommendation corner that we have of the entire time because it's got Kevin Bacon in it.
Ooh, yeah.
And as everyone knows, Kevin Bacon is like the skeleton key to literally every movie in Hollywood. So it's going to be difficult choices when it comes to recommendations, but I'm very excited to discuss this film with you and take it back to the past next time on Superhero Cinema Club. Mike, this was fun. Thanks again for doing this.
Hell yeah, this has been amazing. I'm having a lot of fun so far. X-Men is going to be a great season.
I know that this was not the highest quality. In fact, it was terrible in your book, but I hope
Clearly
that
it was
you
terrible.
Enjoyed this episode at least somewhat.
Oh, I always enjoy doing this with you, for sure.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week on another episode of Superhero Cinema Club.
Superhero Cinema Club is hosted by Mark Schiff and me, Mike Carnes. Produced by Mark Schiff. Editing by Mike Carnes. Original music provided by Chris Carnes. Find him on Spotify. Be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us at Superhero Cinema Club, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we dive into another epic adventure from the world of superhero cinema.